Hey, guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing great.
Doing fine. How are you doing?
Wet and cold. Tonight I thought I would tell y'all some interesting information. As y'all know, I keep up with the financial situation of our country. And I know that y'all are very well aware that we are tied to the European Union. When other people in this country were watching the campaigning going on between Barack Obama and during 2008 and 2009, I was watching what was happening over in Europe because I had this deep feeling that something was going to happen that would affect us, and I was correct. I finally put my rest of my puzzle together this evening, so I thought I would share it with y'all. This actually started, I guess y'all remember there are 3 treaties that we are working on. One of them is the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership, and the other one is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Well, this actually all started in 1967 when the U.S. Undersecretary of State George Ball testified before the Senate, and he stated, "We must move in the direction of common physical concepts, a common monetary policy, commercial monetary and antitrust policies, and even the disciplinary supervision of earth-straddling corporations have to be increasingly entrusted to supernatural institutions instead of nation-states without a common philosophy or goal." Okay, it goes on, and I had remembered about the Lisbon Treaty that was up before the European Union citizens to vote on. And they had to pass this treaty in order to get all their little puzzles put together for this global governance and all. So I did some checking. I kept thinking about that. So I found out that the OECD, which is, hold on, I've got it written down, it is connected to the United Nations. It's an organization for economic cooperation. OECD work has been with the FATC legislation, and that's what our president did a while back when he said that they wanted to keep up with everybody's personal bank accounts, taxation, and things like this, and all. Okay, it was enacted by the United States in 2010. Now, that's the FATC. We are funding this agenda at the tune. All right, we are funding OECD per year $100 million from our taxes. All right, what they're planning on doing is a global taxation. They are preparing a global taxation system for the one world government. 40 governments have already adopted a plan to collect all financial information of every single citizen in their countries and share it with each other. All right, and then I realized at the 2009 meeting, there was a discussion, and it turns out that China and them wants a new monetary system enacted by 2015.
Oh, yeah. I have been telling everyone what is going to happen with the monetary system will happen this year. And if you read the material, start digging through what I sent you today and start looking at all other documents that underpin and other links that underpin the threads, you'll find that it goes into a lot of the history and background of this and reaffirms exactly what you're saying.
Right, and I want to say a little bit more. In 2013, a global taxation congress was held by the Irish Tax Institute with Harvard, and those participating, the countries participating, was Singapore, Ireland, the IMF, the OECD, and the U.S., and IRS as big corporations. There were corporations that were involved in this meeting. And then a couple of months later, a global OECD, EU, G8, and G20 are working on global tax plans. So this has all been working behind our back for quite some time. And I sent Brent tonight the copy of the report that the U.S. Secretary George Ball stated in a Senate hearing in 1967. And so I have sent that all to y'all. Once the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership and the Trans-Pacific Partnership is passed, this is when everything starts falling into place.
Yeah. And, well, that's just it. You've got to have open commerce. You've got to have basically, that's why you cannot have sovereign states. You cannot have borders and have open commerce. So that is exactly, you're seeing basically a dissolving of borders. You know, all throughout the Middle East, you basically got a single Muslim Brotherhood nation or a single Muslim nation now that we've basically uprooted the Middle East, their leadership. Now you see it taking place in Europe, and that's why they won't close the borders in Mexico.
Exactly.
I mean,
and I'll tell you something else. A lot of people wonder why I have stayed so much tied with the European Union and with the United Nations. It's because they're joined to the hip. They're like a brother
right.
and sister. Okay, what I was going to say, the European Union several years ago signed a agreement or declaration called the Barcelona Declaration, which opened their borders not only for the European Union citizens, but from those from Muslim nations. The City of London, I forgot what the percentage of the City of London is now Muslim. And a lot of the European countries are kind of fussing because the Muslims are getting out in the street and they're praying to Allah, you know, getting out and bowing down and praying to Allah and backing up traffic in protest. So we're seeing something that they have been developing for a long time. And you're right. That's the reason why our borders are not closed. And it's because we're supposed to be a North American Union, and just like as they are the European Union. And it has been very interesting to me because it is tied to the financial situation that we're involved in now. And the financial situation is not getting better. Matter of fact, 225 Radio Shacks are closing. Some of the restaurants are having a very hard time because people do not have the funds to spend on going out to eat. And I have been telling everybody, and I'll tell your listeners also, too, 2014, this year, is going to be a very bad year for Americans because food prices are escalating. Gas prices are not going to go down. Your natural gas, I'll take, for instance, mine. Last year it was $1.10 a gallon. It's $2.39 a gallon now. The same year, the same time of the year. So it has gone up $1.29. And from what I'm hearing, it's probably will not go down like it normally does in the summer. And so they're busy working on eroding our financial economy. They're eroding our moral attitudes in our country. They're trying to destroy Christianity, to be honest with you. And, they have pretty well got this sewed up. And while we were being good Americans, taking care of our families, working very hard, putting food on the table, making sure our children were raised right, they were all going behind our backs and plotting this for a long, long time. And now
Carol, I have a question for you.
Yes, go ahead.
Talking about the EU, I know you concentrate on that a lot, and then take Putin's actions, how he's responding to Barack Obama. I've been seeing Putin coming for years. I've posted things on Twitter. I've posted things on Facebook. People really haven't over the years paid a whole lot of attention to Vladimir Putin, and I knew once he got back into power, things were going to happen. And I do believe he has a true disdain for Barack Obama. I don't think he likes him. I think he has no respect. And so he's taken us as Americans. He's taken our president to a level that we've never seen before. He's a complete wuss. And
well,
I know
the only
Vladimir Putin. Well, I was going to say kind of a second part, but the second part is I know Vladimir Putin. In my mind, he knows what's going on with the EU. Okay, and you've seen all the gas pipelines coming out of the Ukraine. I believe there's 18 of them. Do you think there's a chance that Vladimir Putin is actually helping us in a roundabout sort of way?
No.
You don't? Okay, because
no.
I know he's not a fan of the EU.
Well, let me explain this. If you, I've got an article that I'll send it to you tonight, and I'll write a note to myself where he speaks of a new world order. He is wanting to create Eurasian Union. All right, if you look back into, I don't know if y'all have read the Global Chessboard, the Grand Chessboard by Brzezinski. He talks about Eurasia. They do not want Putin to develop his Eurasian Union because that will create their problem for their new world order. In other words, what I'm saying is, in reading as I have done and studying this, staying hours and hours at this, I really think there's two world orders. You've got the BRICS, and then you've got the United States and the European Union. Now, some of the writings that I have been reading, and they believe eventually Putin, the European Union, and the Union will all combine together to make one communistic organization.
So right now you think they're just having a little tiff, but that eventually they're going to come together?
Well, see, Brzezinski hates Russia. He wants to surround Russia with NATO. But I have a photo where George Soros went to NATO in 2009. And I also know that NATO signed a secret agreement and left Russia out, and that was giving them the authority to use what I call the granddaddy poppers anytime they get ready to, and without having to go to the United Nations Security Council or to our government or anything like that. In other words, they're getting the control over the arms, the military, for what goes up in the air and explodes. I'll put it that way. I hate the word use. But there's been NCSIS, which is Brzezinski and Soros, had the document on their website, and a couple of weeks ago it has disappeared. But this was on the secret agreement. And I did find an article, and if I can remember, I'll write myself a note. I'll send it to y'all, where somebody apparently found the secret agreement and wrote an article about it. So I will send that to y'all too. But Brzezinski, like I said, he hates Russia with a passion. And, of course, Soros, I guess, he just hates anything and everything that walks on this earth. And they're involved in what is going in Ukraine. And Soros and Otpor Maiden on their Facebook page had where they use Gene Sharp's strategies, Otpor. And so they're all tied into it. There is a businessman from Ukraine, and I'll give you his name in just 1 second. And he is involved with Clinton, Open Society, and Bill Gates. And I'll hold on just 1 second, and I'll give you the name, and I'll give you the name of his foundation, because he has created a foundation. And, of course, he's got on his foundation website listed Open Society and Bill Gates and Clinton Global Incentive. And here it is. All right, it is Victor Pinchuk, Pinchuk, and it's his foundation. Is a member of the European Foundation Center and the Ukrainian Grant Makers Forum, and a partner of, I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'll spell it to you. It's YALTA, European Strategy. We collaborate with the Clinton Global Incentive, the Brookings Institute, which is a far-left institute in our country who plays a great part in the government of our country. They give forums where they have the politicians to come, and they all talk about and discuss how to handle the government. All right, and then you've got the Peterson Institution for International Economics, the Open Society Institute, the Aspen Institute, which is supposed to be a right foundation or right institute where politicians go and discuss. But it turns out if you do a really good research, you'll find out that George Soros, through the back door, is funding this. And the reason why I brought up this Victor Pinchuk, he was part of the protest in Ukraine, pushing for Ukraine to join the European Union and the International Monetary Fund.
Wow. Can you guys still hear me? I dropped off a couple of times, so...
Yeah,
I can hear you.
You're fine.
Okay. But I guess, it's pretty bad getting dropped off your own show.
But there are two articles that I feel like everybody needs to go and read. They're on Zero Hedge and all. Apparently, a ship was sunk in the bay in Crimea, and I guess it was Russia that did it. And there's another article where it talks about from the Moscow Times that apparently there'll be a war. So things are not a happy situation in Ukraine, and I really hate it because I do not care for Putin. I do not care for the European Union. I do not care for the United Nations. If I was Ukrainian and had enough sense to get on a computer, if I was able to get on the computer and do research, I would not join the European Union, nor the IMF, nor Putin. I would try to stand on my own. And right now I don't see how in the world they can, because Russia has got their natural gas pipelines running through Ukraine to service the European Union. So they're in a very bad situation. And I hope Americans who are listening tonight will keep those people in our prayers, even though a lot of them I do not go along with, like the Nazi parties, which are in Ukraine, which took over the protest. And, I think one of them is Sabada, and it in the last election gained 10% of the parliament. And they have a very serious situation over there. And I use the word sheeple, just like I call Americans who are not awake to what is happening. And Ukrainians, there are a lot of Ukrainians that are sheeple and have no earthly idea what is going on.
Yeah, well, now here are my thoughts. Mine differ a little bit, but not much. What I see happening, this explains why the markets didn't continue to implode once the invasion happened, is because money was being routed through the IMF to Putin to prop up the Russian markets in order to sustain the Western markets. In other words, right now, should be in utter chaos because what's going on in the Ukraine. Because, we all know it is a very explosive situation for the bordering countries with the Ukraine if they happen to go by the way of Russia and the EU. So someone is financially propping up Russia because Russia's economy sucked. I mean,
yes,
big time before. When this happened, it just sucked further. And Ukraine has been, steady, but not really doing great. They've been holding their own. Because of that gas pipeline. And, of course, now that asset is in Putin's hand, and he's not going to let it go because most of Russia is supplied gas from the Ukraine. So,
right. And also another thing, it was just in the news and all that Ukraine has signed a deal with Chevron. I think it was like for $10 billion for them to explore for oil. Now, Chevron is also doing business with Putin, so that's pretty interesting. Apparently corporations do not decide if a nation is communist or if a nation is socialist or Nazism or whatever. They're just out for the money they can get out of it and all. But this just recently came about. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
My stepfather's the assistant plant manager in Saudi Arabia for Chevron.
Uh-huh.
And he's an engineer,
Right.
I've talked to my dad. But engineers, accountants, they have a mindset. And, he just wants to do his job and do what his company wants him to do.
Well, they've got to make a living.
Yeah.
Right. The employees have got to make a living. It's not the employees that work for the corporations. It is the ones way up. It's like the NGOs. It's like the presidents of the corporations and stuff that are involved in this.
Right.
We are nothing in their eyes to the global agenda we're nothing but serfs. And we're working for them so they can make their millions of dollars. And we're thankful to have a wage. And, that's how society has been built by them, and it's a shame. It really is, because I truly believe capitalism could work if it had not, or if it's not being handled by corruption. And there is a great deal of corruption.
While we were talking a little while ago, Brandon Burkhart, the president of the River City Tea Party, and I really appreciate you getting involved with them. I think they really appreciate you, too. You put up a lot of good information. And while we were talking, Brandon sent me because he listens to the show every week, and he said, Brent, how do we stop this? And I just responded, it's a long, long, long process. And I've tried to reiterate that on our show so many times that this has been going on for, over 100 years, where the left is now, where they've gotten to, and with their goal, they're right there at the tip. They've almost reached their milestone that they've been working all these years for. And in my opinion, there's no way that we're just going to have, get a Republican president and it's all over with. This is a long process that we as on the right are going to have to go through in order to correct all that's occurred. But whenever somebody says, how do we stop this, what is your answer? Because it's really hard to come up with one.
Let me explain something. And I do not intend on offending anybody tonight. But as y'all all know, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have been involved in the structuring of this global governance or New World Order. And you can look back, just like Nixon took us off the gold standards. FDR put us in the John Maynard Keynes's economics. He was a Fabian socialist. LBJ gave, I can't think of it. I think it was Ball. It was a European. I can't think of what his name is right now, but gave him a medal. So you can look back and see where each president has played a part. Like Bush Sr. went to the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 and signed the agreement for Agenda 21 and brought it back. Pelosi tried, well, there's a video on YouTube to prove this. She went before the Senate to try to push for it to be ratified. All right, and then you've got Clinton and all. He created the Sustainable Development Department, which when Congress would not ratify and the Senate would not ratify Agenda 21, he went around the bend and created the Sustainable Development Department, which is actually Agenda 21 in our nation. And all. And then you've got, pardon me again, and all, because I have been a very hardcore Republican. I sat on my executive committee. I knew the former governor really well. You know, I was friends with him and all this. But Bush Jr. put us back into UNESCO. That's the United Nations Educational System. So we've got to look at every president. One thing that I have tried to tell people when we have talked about this, you need to do a really good research on the candidate or the one that is in office at this time. You need to look at what they've passed or the remarks they've made and all, because I'll be honest, I don't know how in the world we're going to be able to stop this. But I can say this. If we got the right people in office, we could detain it. For how long, I don't know. I mean, as a Christian, I can, and I hate to bring my religion and a political agenda, but as a Christian, I look at my Bible and I can see things from my Bible that we're dealing with now. So I look at it as it's all in God's hands.
Carol, based on what you just said, and I want to add that I am a Christian, a devout Christian, but I am also a Freemason, just like Dar was. So I look at things from different angles, from mysticism and the occult. And this is, occult is all into this. It's a Luciferian secularism. Put it this way, the basic biblical belief is that you believe in the existence of a single God that unifies us. In other words, it's the same God. But secularism has no God. It's not. They look at it more from a Gnostic point of view, where you, the individual, are capable of being a God, and that's the way they approach it. That's the way they approach everything. That's what brings in humanist, transhumanism, and then the whole Gaia movement, which is the New Age movement. There's nothing new about it. It's Zoroastrianism and goes back to Babylon, and people don't understand how much.
No, they don't.
It's not religion, but it's just ancient history that is involved in this.
And, well, you and I had talked about this on your last radio show. You remember I told you about checking out the Temple of Understanding, and I think I know I had sent you a video on it. And then you and I had talked about Lucifer Trust, which is Lucis Trust now, which is part of the United Nations. And, a lot of people, it scares them to death to even think about this or to even explore further into what is actually happening. But people, I'm telling you tonight, your listeners, Americans, Christians, and all, we have got to look at this at all angles. We have got to understand deeply what is happening to our country, what is happening to this world. We have got to understand that this is a one world agenda and a one world currency, a one world religion is what is actually being developed. And it's not a conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy wacko. I go for the documents like what I found from Undersecretary of State George W. Ball in a U.S. Senate hearing in 1967. It's on page 271 and 272, and where he talks about a common monetary policy. In other words, he's talking about a one-world currency. They think they can create the perfect utopia. It's like the Tower of Babel. The European Union, when they were working to create their agenda, their posters were actually the Tower of Babel. And a lot of the Christians over there started fussing, and they said, look, this is biblical. We're not going to vote for something that's biblical. So the Christians and the anti-Christians and all, they kind of had words and all, but it still passed, even though a lot of the Europeans are saying they never voted for this. They never even voted for the president of the European Union. They say he is not an elected official, even though he says he is. So they're under control. I have told people on Facebook, everything that goes on in the European Union, we can expect it on our shores in the near future. And just like they have surveillance over there. Actually, their trash cans have a mechanism on it that the government can keep up with how much trash they throw away. They have Europol, which a surveillance. They have got. I had one person to tell me to even have any kind of privacy in their home, they have to close their blinds and their drapes, and even during the daytime in UK. That's how bad it's getting. And we're hitting the same thing with the drones in the skies and NSA and everything else that's going on. So we're seeing our future by looking in the European Union mirror.
Oh, yeah, they're ahead of us. I think the United States was going to be last simply because of the rights that we have as a nation to, number one, bear arms. Okay?
Right.
And so, that's why the U.S. has prevailed as long as it has, is because its citizenry was its own militia. And that's as it was intended to be, as it was intended to stay, according to the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But as you see, they're trying to they're going after local municipalities now to try to change it. First starting, of course, in Connecticut, and now in Maryland, and it's moving through the Northeast. Now, hopefully, it will never succeed in the South or in Texas or in various other states, simply because we won't allow it. I mean, we'll in other words, we'll be like Charlton Heston. We'll die with our guns in our hands. I mean,
right, exactly. And let me say this about Texas. I love Texas. My husband and I lived in Texas for almost 13 years. I have family. He has family out in Texas. And our son was born in Texas. And Texas is a wonderful state, and I admire them deeply because they're very patriotic, just like Alabama, a lot of the southern states are. And you're right. I think the government will have a terrible time trying to force these issues that they're trying to do in the north at this time. But it will come our way.
Oh, yeah.
We better be ready.
And as a Texan, I've been hearing the moderate Republicans over and over and over saying, look, we've got to remain in the middle, we've got to attract more moderates, blah, 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 blah. Well, Texas was proved. Now, we didn't win the John Cornyn race for Senate. Steve Stockman ran a horrific campaign. This guy, I don't know what happened to him. I mean, you look at him on Twitter. I've been following him on Twitter for years, and he seems like a real conservative type guy. But when push came to shove, he ran probably the worst campaign ever in the history of this state. And John Cornyn easily won it. Wayne Stovall, that's who I voted for, he's a good conservative in my opinion based on what I've seen, but he just didn't have the funds. I mean, John Cornyn had $7 million in the bank. And I felt like here in Texas, I ain't kidding you, I mean, for the last 2 months, I felt like that John Cornyn had his own television commercial. But back to the other races, Kenneth Paxton easily won the Attorney General. Dan Patrick for Lieutenant Governor beat David Dewhurst, he's a rhino. Texas proved that you can run on a little bit further to the right platform and still win. And
well, you're going to have to, because Texas is a very valuable state
absolutely.
To the socialist. If they can break Texas and make them a blue state, and y'all have already got, and I have put on Riverside information concerning Texas in Agenda 21. This is one thing that all of y'all have got to do, and I'm stressing got to do, is to fight locally in your city hall, in your city councils and stuff. You've got to stop the progress of what they're doing, because Texas is a valuable state due to the fact that it's right there on the Mexican border. They are working on that high rail. You can go to America 2050, and I've showed the Texans on the Tea Party concerning this. They have got where the triangle from San Antonio up to Dallas and down, and all. That's where your major urbanism, where they're planning on packing and stacking humans
absolutely.
Into that area. Just like in our area in Alabama, it's up around Birmingham and then down the seacoast and all. So they have already got their strategies. They've already got their plans fixed, and it's up to the local citizens. It's up to Americans that truly love their country to stop this on a local agenda. Because
in the last mayor's race, do you know what percentage of this city voted in the mayor's race?
No.
7%. That's it.
Yeah. See, that's not going to work. You got to get people
horrible.
to the polls. I mean, and that's one of the other things I want to say is with this, we know Carol and I, Brent, we know we've got a tsunami coming away. And we know that, it's going to be soon. We can't really put a finger on a date in time, but we know that, batten down the hatches and think about, what you're doing with your money and what you're doing with your assets. Think about, how are you going, number one, if you can pay off what you own or what you have, the better off you'll be. Simply because if the economic system does collapse, they can't come back and basically call in the debt and say pay up or else get out. And I mean that's when it hits, I mean that's exactly what's going to happen. The banks are going to come back saying, hey, you can't withdraw your money. You need to pay us. You owe us. If you can't do it, we've leverage on your house, so we're going to have to get out. Well, that car doesn't.
Right, they're not interested in your automobile or your house.
Oh no.
What they're interested is in the minerals. The land is what they're after. They're wanting the natural resources in each state, the minerals that's in the soil, they want total control of everything that you walk on is what their total agenda is. And I'm sure y'all have heard of the Wilderness Conference and all, where they talked about this. So, I mean, it is a very vital thing that if you can get out as much debt as you can, do it. Watch your spending. Have, win, because this economy is going to collapse. I have no doubt whatsoever. And all because I know for a fact that at the G20 meeting, when they met with the International Monetary Fund, they discussed a currency. The G20, China demanded that they have a new monetary policy, a new currency by 2015. I have not been able to find anything which says that the G20 did it. But I do know from hearing Lagarde speak in London, at the end of her speech, she was talking about a new global currency. And all. So this is in their plans. When? It could be next month. It could be December of 2014. It could be in the year of 2015 where China and some of the other countries were pushing it. But they are going to do this, or they're going to try to do it. So we've got to be very careful on our finances. We've got to have things, where you can provide food on the table for your family. And all, because you certainly don't want to be out in the street when everybody else is trying to grab for food and stuff out of the grocery stores. So that's what I have told a lot of people, to get as much of your debt down as you can.
Oh, absolutely. And, matter of fact, bought it last weekend. It's a sign, be careful what you, buy. Make sure you buy only what you want. It's called Patriot Survival, and I've watched some of the videos. It has some very good tips about food stores, things such as that. Because remember, if the economy does collapse, it's going to be global. And it's going to be, basically at the same time. And and remember, talking about people, they're not going to work for free. Okay, you can't expect employees to work without getting a paycheck where they can go out and get goods. You can't expect stores to stay open if they don't have merchandise to sell. You can't expect them to stay open if people can't purchase that merchandise. And you can't stay open if you don't have groceries on the shelf. So you need to start really thinking about preparing for a depression-type scenario where you can sustain yourself. And also how you're going to defend those assets, those commodities that do have, because people are going to become desperate and they'll do anything. Crime will be, you think Detroit's bad? Wait till this happens.
Well, crime is starting to escalate because the food stamps, the EBT cards are being cut. And I've been reading a great deal, and I think even in Texas where people pulling up into their own personal driveways, a group would jump out and rob them when they were getting out of the car. They didn't even have time enough to get in their house. So things like this is escalating. People are going to become more and more desperate. Their recommendation for women, not to wear an excessive amount of jewelry when you go out shopping. Do not wear an excessive amount of jewelry when you go to the grocery store. And don't ever pack your buggy full of stuff because there could be somebody watching you, even if it takes you 2 or 3 trips to the grocery store to get what you need to, to start gathering up your little nuts like squirrels do to provide for the winter. and because there's going to be people out there that's going to be watching every move you make besides the government. And so, those are some things that I have told others, to be sure and, follow those kind of instructions. It's for safety caution and all, because nobody wants to be robbed.
And what other?
They're not, the women are not paying attention to that recommendation. I can assure you that.
No, they're scared.
I have women come in with the biggest rocks you've ever seen, and I'm just like, really, I can't believe they're actually going in this city and wearing that on their finger. Just amazed.
It is. It's very amazing because I've seen the same thing, and I've got a friend that went to the grocery store, and she had on a really pretty ring, and somebody actually followed her out into the parking lot.
Yeah.
And it just so happened she had her little taser in her purse. And so, like I said, they are watching, and it's not going to get better. I can assure you. The Federal Reserve, just almost, the last one was it about 2 weeks ago when the stock market went down. It went down $3 trillion. In 2008, the only difference between 2 weeks ago and 2008 when it plummeted and all was it was $3.5 trillion in 2008. It was $3 trillion 2 weeks ago. And actually, I am seriously thinking that we've had not a major collapse, but we've had an earthquake, a rumbling.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the reason why the Federal Reserve is pumping these pomos into the stock market to keep it going up. And then with this Ukraine business escalating, if we do get involved, for goodness sakes, remember the executive order that this president signed concerning that he will confiscate, the government will confiscate. So we've got a lot of things that we've got to be thinking about. Because I live on a farm, and I am not going to allow the government to take it from me. So if we get involved in Ukraine and y'all don't hear from me, come looking for me.
Well, definitely we will. I can assure you. May actually come be knocking on your doors. Hey, Carol, you got some of that corn?
Well, they want my tractor and my bulldozer, but they're not going to get my bulldozer, and they're not going to get my farm tractor. They might try. They'll have to drag me out by my feet and all. But he did sign an executive order concerning that to confiscate the equipment from farms and things like that. So be sure and keep that in mind when you're preparing yourselves and all, that if we do get involved with this business in Ukraine, he can pull that executive order out and game over.
Oh, yeah, and remember, think in terms of what it would take for your family to survive for however long period. For instance, if the economy was to just totally blow up, and how long you sustain yourself and your family with food and water, what would you do in that situation? What kind of foods would you have on hand? How would you store those foods? What the things that you can do? Water. Most people don't live by a source of fresh water. Remember, we're talking about the grid may be down, so water will not be fit to drink because it's not being filtered or sanitized through the water system, the public water system. So you won't be able to drink it. You have to find another source of water. Or, best thing I can do is recommend those little filters. They're like, $10 a piece, where you can drink from any source pretty much, and then, keep from getting sick. The last thing you want to do. I mean, that's where many people are going to die who have chronic diseases because their medications demand that they stay cold or a certain temperature, like and there's so many things to think about. I mean, it's almost overwhelming, but you've got to think in terms of what it can take to sustain you. And SurvivalPatriot.com, on the video, it says that during the first 3 days, people will die just from the shock of what happened and not knowing what to do. They'll just go in a catatonic state, just simply fade away. And, a lot of us aren't going to be that way. I know I'm not, and I know that you guys aren't, but there's a lot of people who have been in denial who will say, well, I guess they were right. I should have listened, Oh, what do I have under the cupboard? Oh, okay, I got a can of beans, but it's only one can. I'll just eat a bean a day until however many beans are in that can.
That's
I'm laughing.
It's something that it's serious, and it doesn't hurt to laugh, because you've got to have laughter during all this time and all, because, there are times when I have read documents from the European Union, from our government, that absolutely I feel like I'm sitting here in a nightmare. And
right.
That is the gospel truth. And, just like China went to Brussels a few weeks ago and signed an agreement that, they're going gung-ho with Agenda 21. And China is building rapid transit throughout Europe. And so, it's here. There's no way. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a nut job. This is true. And Agenda 21 really exists. Urbanization exists. Your high rails exist. Those streetcars that River City was talking about, as I tell all of them, it's part of Agenda 21. And so, everybody has to be educated on what is going on. We've got to understand in order to be able to equip ourselves to fight this when it does happen. Education and knowledge are two of the most important things that us human beings can have, besides the love of God in our heart, because He's going to have to come first, because we're going to have to rely on Him more than we ever have before. And so, it's amazing what is happening. And like I said, there's nights that I have stayed up to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because I have sat and didn't want to put the document down. I wanted to read it to understand what was going on. And I have been in this for a long, long time. And
I think one of the major problems we have as conservatives is, and I've said on this show so many times, the left is actually much better at organizing than we are.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that. We as conservatives, I have no problem, being alone, doing my job. I'm not real dependent on others. The left, they tend to thrive on being accepted. And I think us conservatives really don't. We just are who we are. And if people accept us, fine. If they don't, we really don't care. That's how we carry on our daily lives. We're not assholes, but we just don't need that constant feedback of, am I doing a good job, or do you like me? That's not part of our persona. And I think where our shortfall is, if we're going to combat these folks, then we're going to have to kind of learn how to better come together. But we're so used, you live on a farm, you and your husband are, y'all probably have a lot of alone time. And that's how my wife and I live. We're not going out to restaurants 5 nights a week. We go to work, we come home, we enjoy each other. End of story,
Well, I will say this. I have been very active in our city government. I was even active in our state government. One thing we have been fighting 2030. As I know that I had posted videos on River City concerning the Florida 2050 and all, where Duane, who is an architect who works for the United Nations and received an award last year from the United Nations, was speaking to the citizens in a community in Florida saying that fascism would work. And he was talking about the United Nations, very arrogant, but he flat told what was going on. I mean, he didn't beat around the bush. And those people thought it. We've got 2030 in my area. When they had a local meeting, some of us ladies went to it, and they were talking about international code as for your electricity wiring and things like that. And I spoke up and I said, no. I said, we are not going with that. I said, if we're going to do with anything, it will be an American agenda, not international. I said, because that's part of ICLEI. So it was stopped. Matter of fact, they didn't get anywhere because every time they opened their mouths to say something, I raised my hand politely and asked them, could I ask a question? So if
way to go, Carol.
If you're educated and all, you can stop them on a local level. And one thing is come back with questions at them. Throw them, they're felicitators. They've been trained to speak. And they're not used to somebody coming back and asking a whole lot of questions that puts them off guard. So that's one thing that you've got to learn to do.
Oh, yeah. If you start throwing facts at them and case scenarios and common sense, and then start putting them in a position in which they can't answer questions about what they speak, then, I mean, either one or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to get thrown out, or they're going to cave, basically, because they can't sustain the argument. So that's why it's so relevant to educate yourself on these issues. I mean, I think that's where conservatives are winning the fight, because we're educating ourselves, whereas left, they're still, hey man, gay rights, peace, love, brothers, let's bring all the animals together to, all this crap, and wearing the John Fox mask, what Occupy something, and it's their side is complete secularism without a brain. I mean, if you want to look at zombies and compare them to zombies, I mean, pretty much that's what they are. They just go along with hippie flow. I mean, you're basically looking at a repeat of the 60s with some of these people, and that's the scary thing about Common Core, is I've seen some Common Core stuff, and I'm looking at it going, how the hell do you get this?
Yeah, that's the truth. And, and of course, Texas is very fortunate. But I can assure you, somewhere down the line, there's a little touch of Common Core. There's a little touch of the United Nations International Baccalaureate in your educational system. So one thing you've got to do, and parents, you've got to make time for your children. You've got to ask them questions about what did they learn in school today. You've got to take time to help them with their lessons so you can keep up with everything. Because the UNESCO, even in our school system, and they were sending out posters for Earth Day. And a lot of us parents got to asking questions about this Earth Day. So they took the posters down. So that's how you can combat things locally, is learning what this is, learning what their departments are, learning what their words are, sustainable development, Common Core standards, UNESCO, Habitat. All these things, if you learn what they are, then you'll be able to combat it locally. And the financial situation at this time, there's nothing we can do about that. That's totally out of our control. But we can, like I said, we can do things locally to maybe detain them from furthering their agenda, on this Agenda 21 and everything else that the European Union, United Nations wants. And the treaties, like you were saying, Brent, on your congressmen and your senators, when they come to your community, ask them about it. Say, I heard about this TPP. What is this? And you tell me what's in that contract that y'all signed that makes it so good, or either you give me a copy of that contract. Go back at them with things.
Oh, and I'll tell you, I went back in 2010. Lamar Smith is my representative, and he invited me to his office. They kind of hand-selected about 60 people in the area to go and visit with him, and there were three different groups of 20, and we sat down at a big conference table, and I had all of Joanne Moretti's core exit and the Gulf oil spill EPA material. I had it with me, and I questioned him about the EPA and what they were doing to Texas, and brought up core exit. That had been banned in the UK, and that's what they were using to get rid of the oil in the Gulf of Mexico. And you could have heard a pin drop, because I was basically the youngest guy in there. I'm 46. Well, I'm about to be 46 years old, and the other people in there were a bunch of people bitching about Obamacare. It was right about that time whenever the argument was going on, and it just got real silent. And he looked at me. He looked me in the eye, and he said, "I want to tell you right now." He said, "The EPA is going after Texas." He said, "and I will do everything I can to stop them." Me and Brandon Burkhart were actually messaging each other about this earlier tonight. But, he looked me in the eye, and he told me that he was going to do everything he could. And all the time I look at news, and if there's one congressman that's fighting the EPA, it's Lamar Smith, and so I do respect him for that.
Well, that's good. Keep up with him. Make sure that he stays on his toes. In other words, poke him in the back sometimes to make him sure, make him sure that you're still existing, and all, because we've got to let them know that we're here and that we're watching every little thing that they do, and all. They're under microscope, and all, because mine used to make town hall calls. He quit coming to Roanoke, and all.
Yeah,
and
I
got to asking about the International Monetary Fund. They don't call me anymore. I don't ever hear anything from them anymore, except once in a while an email wanting to know what's the news lately, Carol, and all. But if he comes back, I'll be right there, because I asked him one of the questions that I asked him at the last meeting that he had with the community. And I asked him about this new global currency, and he said, "What are you talking about?" And I threw out an article from the Telegraph Daily where Tax Chief Tim was all for it, that they had been discussing it at the G20 meeting. And he said, "I'm not aware of this." So there's things that you can do to make them look foolish because they're not doing their job. But it also, when you give them the proof, they go back to Washington with it. So that, we've got to keep them on their toes. As I stated, there is nothing we can do concerning the financial situation and all, because that is totally out of our control. What I try to do is watch it to see if I can tell when things are going to get critical.
Carol.
Yes.
Have you ever noticed when you're outside, maybe, around the farm, drones flying over your home?
Not yet, but I expect it any time. I've got a friend that lives in New Hampshire. She's got the drones flying over here because she's had some from the Democratic Party on her back and all that have been checking her out. and all, because she's very vocal. And all. Matter of fact, she's a very lovely lady, very educated. She lost her job because she spoke up, and she was a teacher, and she spoke up against the international bachelorette. She understood what it was. And, of course, she lost her job, but she would say, it was worth it because she stopped it in their school system. She got parents interested in finding out what it was. So I admire her for standing up, even though she lost her job. But, she's made it very, very well. And that's sometimes we have to make a sacrifice in order to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, and that's not even the hard part. That's the part that says, I don't want to live that way. I don't want the young people to have to live that way. I don't want to be told what I need to wear. I don't want to be told what I need to do. I don't want to be told how I should do it. I don't want to be told where I should live. In other words, I want to be self-sufficient. I want to take responsibility for my own actions. I don't need, somebody like Barack Obama or his wife telling me about food deserts. When I look at Michelle Obama's butt, I think of food deserts. Okay, and it's food. People buying into this horse crap about what these idiots are trying to tell you, and just like Carol said, is arm yourself mentally for the challenge, and you will halt them in their tracks. They can't defend themselves. They'll say something like, well, in order to know what's in it, you'll have to pass it. You remember that one?
Yes, I do. And one of the personal meetings that I had was with the congressman was at McDonald's, and we were talking about Agenda 21. And I just plain out came out and told him. I said, Congressman Rogers, I said, this little old lady has a really nice pistol, and she knows how to shoot. So if anybody comes to my home and tries to tell me what I have to do, or I have to close down the process of our farm, I said, they're going to wind up realizing that this isn't a sweet lady. And I said, doesn't your wife have a pistol? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I said, well, that's good. She might need it one of these days.
That's okay. We got 1.9 billion bullets.
And all, but I mean, and he left. His personal right-hand guy gave me his email address, and a personal phone number, cell phone number I can call anytime I want to, and all. But what I'm getting at, y'all, they know this old girl in Alabama that lives on a farm in a rural area is not stupid. And that's where our smarts has got to come in. We've got to show them that we're not stupid, we're not gullible. We're going to ask questions, and we're going to find out what's going on one way or the other.
I truly believe that the rural areas are the ones that are going to really be a major part of saving the country. I grew up in a small Texas town. I live in a big city now, but as it's just these rural people, they didn't go to Harvard, they didn't go to Yale, but they are not stupid.
No, we're not. I went to a junior college.
Probably you take IQ tests between somebody that owns a farm in Alabama versus somebody who graduated from Harvard, and I'd probably put my money on the farmer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I attended a junior college, and I was working on a degree. But I will say this. I think I'm far smarter than, like you say, from Harvard. And because I had educated myself in doing a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I don't take no for an answer. If I can't find it, I'm going to find somebody that'll find me the answer.
That's right.
And you don't shut up.
No, and it's like you say, it's perseverance, and unfortunately, the mindset now is with colleges that you are expected to have college education. That's one of the things you're supposed to do. But what they don't tell you is first question to ask your professor if you go to university: when was the last time you actually received a paycheck for doing what you're supposedly an expert at? And see what they tell you.
Right.
Most of them.
My grandfather grew up in Pancake, Texas, during the Depression, which is not even a town anymore. And I've seen that man do more real estate deals coming out. He's just a gold miser. I mean, he'll buy properties and sell them for well above what he paid for them. And hell, one time he bought a what's the name of that? It's one of those RV deals, Pace something, I don't know. But he bought this thing used, drove it for 10 years. Every year him and my grandma would go up the East Coast, go into Canada, come back down the West Coast, go gambling in Lake Tahoe and Vegas, and he kept that thing for 10 years and then sold it for $5,000 more than he paid for it, 10 years ago. And he had a fifth grade education.
That's what I call a good cattle swapper.
That's right.
And my grandmother never. Right, my grandmother never graduated even from elementary school. She worked in a cotton mill, but she always wanted her children and her grandchildren to do far better than what she did. But in 1996, before she passed away, she told me that she saw the signs that our country was definitely in a socialist government. She didn't know anything about Agenda 21. She didn't know that much about the United Nations and all, but she said that we would have a president one of these days that will completely put us totally under socialism. So she saw the signs, and I didn't. I thought she was losing it right before she passed away. But the elderly can tell things a lot better sometimes than what we can.
Right.
And I mean, they don't have the book smarts. They've got the wisdom, where a lot of the young people don't even have wisdom or common sense.
Oh, yeah, they've seen, what happened under Stalin. They see what happened with Mussolini. They see what happened firsthand under Hitler. So particularly those who were immigrants can tell you, especially from Cuba, can tell you, guys, you are going in a place that you do not want to go. And I mean, they will tell you right up front, this was not the country that I wanted to come to escape Cuba. Now that we're going the direction we're going. And I wanted to bring up something because particularly because it deals with FDR. FDR is probably one of the most ruthless sons that we ever had acting as a president, other than his brother that's up in office now. And look at the Hoover Dam. Look at these monuments. Pay close attention to them, and notice the different things about them in terms of the esoteric. And you will be amazed about the things that you see when you start looking at these symbols, because in these symbols are clues that are hidden as to what you're going to be dealing with. There's a guy, let's see, FDR was supposedly very interested in the occult, as was Hitler. Henry Wallace was his vice president. Well, Henry Wallace had a wonderful friend in Russia. And his name was Nicholas Roerich. And Nicholas Roerich, later, he's not only being a painter, but he also became very endowed in the UN in one of the programs in the UN or with his namesake. And what I'm telling you is that this form of, you're looking at a rebirth of the Babylonian Empire. I mean, in a nutshell.
Well, I had posted on Riverside City an article that I've had for quite some time from the Telegraph Daily. Our government are the ones that created the European Union. And I mean, it's in black and white. It's, you know, if you study Jean Monnet, Monnet, and he was part of it, besides Alan Dulles, Dulles. So I'm hoping that the River City Patriots paid attention to that article because, like I said, we're the ones, our government was behind the creation of the European Union. And
I mean, if you go back to the Revolution, I was watching something on TV that I never knew, and it was I don't know if this is A&E or History Channel, but I was up late on my, I didn't have to go to work the next day, so I'm flipping channels, and Benjamin Franklin, one of the biggest disappointments that he had in his entire life was his own son, William.
Right, yeah.
And William was a loyalist. So we've been dealing with these loyalists from day one. They haven't gone away.
No.
And they want us to be Europeans all over again.
Right.
Mike and I have gone back. This show really we haven't done so much of it lately, but our main forte over the years has been kind of taking history and putting it together with what's going on today, and we've gone all the way back to Babylon. And I think you mentioned Babylon earlier on in the show.
The Tower of Babel. Yeah.
You just kind of follow the trail.
Follow the trail. A lot of Americans do not know, when they talk about International Monetary Fund, they think it's over in Europe. It's in D.C. It's parked right there with our congressmen and our senators. And, Christy Lagarde is here in our country. She's not paying any taxes. She's got an outlandish salary that she makes, and it's our taxes that help puts it in her pocket. Just like this OECD, we're paying $100 million out of our own money, from you, me, and Michael, and Brandon, and all the rest of them. We're paying them. Now get this. We are paying them to create a global currency and a global governance.
Right.
So a lot of things that is happening, it's not all of it in Europe. A lot of it is in our country in D.C.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. In other words, these people, they don't define borders. They don't define they don't define exceptionalism, and they don't define nationalism. They see the thing as one world. In other words, if you are familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, you will see basically a list of the 10 things that they hope to achieve. I mean, it's all there, and it's in granite, and I've been there. So, there's nobody out there that can tell me, oh, the Georgia Guidestones don't exist. Well, they exist. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have read the, at least English part of it. The rest of it was in Egyptian hieroglyphics, Babylonian, Sanskrit, and and also Farsi and every language that I have no clue of. But it's scary stuff. A time capsule that happens to be under that thing that is going to be open when the time is right is what it says. But the question is, I wonder every day, is that time to capsule open yet?
Right, yeah.
I mean,
and gentlemen, I know I have kept y'all long enough, and I didn't mean to keep y'all on certain subjects and stuff, but I have thoroughly enjoyed tonight. And I greatly appreciate y'all allowing me to be on your radio show, as I do Joanne and JoJo's. And I feel like I'm very blessed, greatly, even with the River City Tea Party members. And they're a wonderful group of Americans. And we just all got to work together. But I'm going to get off so y'all can have the last 8 minutes to do whatever else that y'all want to do. And I thank y'all very, very much for allowing me to be on. And Brent, please be sure and send Michael that document, and anybody that's listening tonight. And Brent's got a copy of the 1967 NAFTA, where Undersecretary George Dahl is talking about the monetary policy changing, and it's really, really interesting. And it does go along with the two treaties that they're trying to pass now. And we have got to stop those two treaties if there's any way possible.
Absolutely. And Carol, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank y'all. And God bless y'all. And God bless everybody.
You're a joy to have on. And you're so smart and so informational and just a good person. And I'm praying for your family. I know you got some things going on over there. And just know our hearts are with you.
Well, thank you so much.
Amen.
And y'all are two wonderful gentlemen. I am just very blessed. And I thank y'all, and good night.
Oh, good night.
Okay, Carol. You take care. Leave me some corn. But, no, I tell you what, Carol, hey, if you're on Facebook and, Carol Ray, that's what she goes by, or simply her name, she is an exceptional human being. I mean, you will be blown away by the material that she, and as well as Joanne Moret, and these women alone. If we had everyone who was committed as they were in terms of doing the research and the information they provide, then we could easily get out of this mess that we're in. If we could all meet and gather at the same place and then, come up with ideas to overcome it. But
I agree. We've got to start getting together more. Everybody. She had such a good message about being local. Whether it be just, once a week, once every 2 weeks, and I'm guilty of it. I'll be the first to admit, because, Mike, I put in my hours at work. I put in my hours at researching, what's going on in the world, put in hours on this radio show, and probably just need to, really start getting a little more involved, on a local level. And I'm gonna throw something out here. I'm about to do a commercial, okay?
Okay, go for it.
I get a free beer out of this, but I've got this restaurant here right down the road from my house on West Avenue. It's called Crawdad's Sports Bar and Grill. And Mike, I promise owner, because him and his wife are just really, really good people. I said I'm gonna mention you on my radio show because I know we have San Antonio listeners, but they've got boudin, they've got gumbo, they've got etouffee, and they do a hell of a job. And I got to throw those guys. Maybe I'll meet some of my fellow San Antonio patriots there at Crawdads because, man, I miss home so much. That Cajun food. You know how I am with my Cajun food. I cook it myself.
Oh, yeah.
It sure is nice to have somebody who knows how to do it, and I can just go and pay them a few dollars and get some damn good food. So, I really like these people. They're good people. So if any of my San Antonio listeners are on right now, Crawdad Sports Bar and Grill, 12333 West Avenue, and I'm done with that.
I love anybody that loves a redneck. I used to always not want to be a redneck or be called a redneck because I lived in Alabama. Now I can say I am honestly proud to say. Yep. I am one of the Robertsons.
Heck yeah.
am the duck commander, and as far as everyone else, screw you.
I love that one. I've seen that thing come up on Facebook every so often. It says, when the shit hits the fan, everybody loves a redneck.
That's the truth, man. I mean,
it is.
People make fun about, folks in the South, but yeah, you talk, almost want a war. I mean, with no shoes, no clothes, basically nothing but damn near rock. And that was because I ain't endorsing slavery by any means, but folks in the South, it's like Carol was saying, and I guess my mother-in-law, bless her heart, she's not a high school graduate. She had to drop out and help provide for her family, her sisters. And she's one of the smartest women, if not the smartest one woman I have ever met in my life, because
Absolutely.
she can put things together like an engineer. I mean, I've seen her pack basically a car, with tons, what most people couldn't pack in a tractor trailer, she can put in her trunk.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our grandparents just grew up in an era where you just had to learn how to do things. If you you sit there until you figure it out, and because it's not like you just get on the internet, and get on Google and say, okay, how do I do this? You just had to trial and error.
Oh yeah, and usually they had carried a lot of those old home remedies with them. And matter of fact, the real alternative to care is, find you a Southern homeopath that has carried these traditions down with them. Usually it comes with a combination of honey and vinegar, things like that. And probably you'll be better off without all the drugs and the medicines and the physicians than you were. So keep that in mind. Anyway, we got just a few seconds left, and Brent, enjoyed it, man. It was a great show.
Great show tonight.
Carol,
great show.
Carol, if you're still listening, thank you very much. Apologize again for my computer problem. I gotta get that fixed. I know. But until next week, you guys, God bless, and God bless America. Good night. Take care.
Night, Mike. Have a good one, buddy.
You too, man.